The experience a man goes through when he realizes your self-respect matters more to you than your affection for him is never soft or easy to process. It becomes a deep psychological moment that shakes his pride instantly because he is not simply losing your warmth or your attention. What he is truly losing is his sense of control and the position he once held over your emotional world. This message is not meant to offer shallow comfort or temporary motivation that fades after a few hours. Its purpose is to uncover the exact mental process that begins the moment he understands he can no longer possess your heart at any price. If you are prepared to hear the deeper truth about the transformation happening inside him, hit like so this message can reach the people who desperately need to hear it. When this shift takes place inside you, the entire dynamic of the relationship changes forever for both individuals involved. You are about to understand the 6 major mental phases his mind moves through once your dignity finally becomes stronger than your attachment to him. If you stop listening before the end, you will miss the most important and potentially dangerous part of this entire transformation. This is the section that separates a woman who keeps repeating painful patterns from a woman who finally refuses to abandon herself for love ever again. This is far more than another relationship video because it contains the uncomfortable truth many people spend years trying to avoid. It is the truth you need if you are tired of losing your identity while trying to keep someone else happy. The famous psychologist Carl Jung once suggested that no real connection can happen until a person confronts their own shadow and hidden nature. That is exactly what begins happening here. Your self-respect forces him to face the parts of himself he has been escaping from for years. If these words feel deeply familiar to you, subscribe and leave your thoughts below. Sometimes hearing the truth at the right moment does not simply change your mindset. It completely rebuilds the way you understand love itself. The first stage starts the exact second he realizes you are no longer emotionally available for negotiation. Listen carefully because one of the biggest romantic illusions is about to completely collapse. A man rarely understands he is losing you just because you walked away physically or became distant for a while. He understands it when he realizes he can no longer control your emotional state. This shift is not created by a dramatic speech or a strict list of rules. Comment respect if you have ever felt the moment your dignity finally became stronger than your emotions. It is a quiet but powerful adjustment in the way you see yourself and your value. He feels this internal shift long before he can explain it clearly in his own mind. Think about the story of a woman named Crispal, who was known for being deeply loving, loyal, and emotionally generous with the people she cared about. She did not chase attention or beg others to stay, so people from the outside believed she carried strong dignity. But internally, she constantly abandoned her own standards to maintain peace with the man she loved. She kept excusing his distance and tolerating small deceptions because she wanted to avoid conflict. Then one day, something changed inside her permanently. For years, she confused over-patience with emotional maturity. She believed surrendering to his demands was proof of love and understanding. Without realizing it, she slowly taught him that her boundaries were flexible and could always be ignored when convenient. Then one day, she stopped over-explaining herself. She did not scream, she did not create drama. She simply stopped betraying her own values in all the little ways she had normalized for years. That invisible inner shift changes everything. It completely rearranges the emotional foundation of the relationship. When you finally reconnect with your center, your energy no longer begs him to stay or searches desperately for validation. He instantly feels a painful loss of access to your emotional world, and the intimacy he once assumed would always be available. His first reaction is usually not panic. It is discomfort, deep discomfort. He cannot fully explain why, but your silence suddenly feels heavier than before. Your boundaries no longer seem like emotional walls built out of insecurity. They now feel permanent and immovable. This new reality forces him to stop taking your presence for granted and finally examine where he truly stands in your life. The moment a woman stops being negotiable, a man is pushed into a reality he never prepared himself for. He may not think he is losing you completely yet, but he definitely feels himself losing control. This shift happens when you make three powerful internal decisions that redefine your life completely. You stop staying in places and situations that make your body feel small and tense. You stop explaining your heart to someone who has repeatedly shown they do not want to understand it. And you begin choosing your own emotional health even when he dislikes those choices. That is not cruelty. That is clarity. And clarity becomes very uncomfortable for someone who benefited from your confusion. He begins watching his words more carefully because he knows he can no longer depend on endless chances and unlimited flexibility from you. This is where genuine respect finally begins, because respect is earned through strength of character. Many women think dignity means becoming cold or emotionally unavailable, but real dignity is simply consistency with yourself. Chris Bull did not become cruel toward him. She simply became whole. And suddenly, he started wondering where he fit in her life now that she was no longer revolving around him emotionally. You are no longer reacting to every mood he has. You are finally living your own life instead of chasing emotional breadcrumbs. This destroys his ability to use your love for convenience or temporary comfort. Type "ready" if you want me to explain how to hold your ground without needing to argue or explain yourself. Once your heart understands it does not need suffering in order to experience love, it can never fully return to the old version of itself again. He realizes he can no longer depend on your emotional weakness to get what he wants. That realization forces him into two choices. Either he becomes a better version of himself, or he leaves entirely. Both outcomes are created by one simple thing: you returning to yourself. You do not have to leave physically in order to stop being negotiable. You only need to reconnect with your spirit. Once that happens, the relationship is no longer being held together entirely by your sacrifice and effort. The second stage explains why dignity creates deeper respect than all the love you once gave him. This truth may hurt, but love without structure eventually fades into the background. What truly changes a man's perception is the strength and integrity you display while loving him. When you love someone without abandoning yourself, he can no longer treat your presence like something ordinary. Giving more affection does not automatically create stronger commitment. Sometimes it simply creates comfort without appreciation. Dignity introduces reality into the relationship. It forces him to recognize that you are a complete human being with your own direction and purpose. Jung explained that the human mind naturally respects things that possess shape, structure, and clear boundaries. When boundaries exist, he feels there are lines he cannot cross casually anymore. He begins comparing the woman you are today to the version of you who once waited endlessly for his attention. Before this transformation, your love felt guaranteed. He never feared losing access to it. Now your time, your energy, and your heart have become privileges that require effort and consistency to maintain. Now he has to ask himself whether he is willing to grow or whether he is prepared to lose you permanently. This is not manipulation or emotional strategy, because manipulation changes for someone else while dignity changes for yourself. Your energy no longer demands attention because you are finally investing attention into your own life. In professional counseling, many men admit that their partner suddenly feels different and that things used to be easier. But easy does not mean meaningful. Easy often just means someone had unlimited access to your heart without needing growth or accountability. This is where many women fall backward into old habits. The moment he starts paying more attention because he fears losing you, the temptation to return to old behaviors becomes very strong. But dignity cannot survive if it is used as a temporary trick. It must become part of your identity. This has to be who you are now, not a performance designed to trigger a reaction from him. This is the moment the relationship stops being fantasy and becomes a conscious choice for both people involved. Your dignity cannot promise that he will stay forever, but it does guarantee that you will never abandon yourself again. Ironically, that devotion to yourself is exactly what leaves the deepest impression on his mind. If this shifted your perspective, comment "shift" below. You are no longer standing there waiting to be chosen by him. Now he is the one wondering if he can live up to your standards. Real respect is never built through victimhood. It is built through calmness, clarity, and self-control. Once you stop acting from desperation or pain, he can no longer manipulate your emotions. Dignity leaves a permanent mark on a person's soul. You stop becoming just another memory and start becoming a standard he compares others to. Some men will evolve because of this experience. Others will run away from it because it forces them to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves. Either way, you are no longer sacrificing your soul simply to keep someone beside you. The third stage begins when his respect slowly transforms into fear of losing you. Not childish fear, adult fear. The fear of realizing he may not actually be enough for you anymore. He wants closeness, but suddenly becomes terrified of exposing his flaws and inconsistencies. Share this message with another woman who needs the strength to stop choosing people who refuse to choose her back. He may begin sending confusing messages or behaving hot and cold because he is trying to test whether the old version of you still exists underneath the surface. But once he sees that you are no longer chasing reassurance or explanations, his anxiety begins growing rapidly. He can no longer regulate his emotions through your reactions. He is finally meeting himself without distractions, masks, or excuses. And many men find that deeply uncomfortable. Do not confuse sudden passion or dramatic gestures with genuine love. Often, it is simply an attempt to regain control. Your responsibility is not to rescue him emotionally. Your responsibility is to remain grounded in your own peace. When you stop rushing to fill silence with your energy, he is forced to face the emptiness within himself. Your dignity exposes the truth of the relationship and reveals exactly what both of you are capable of building together. Love rooted in respect searches for consistency. Love rooted in fear only searches for reassurance. By remaining centered, you naturally filter out people who are not emotionally prepared for a mature relationship. Now he becomes the one overthinking every word and every delay. He no longer owns your heart automatically. He must earn access to your trust and energy again. And this independent spirit becomes incredibly attractive because it cannot be controlled easily. This stage is dangerous for you because your instincts may try pulling you back into old patterns. When he appears hurt or confused, you may suddenly feel tempted to become the healer again. But if you return to rescuing him emotionally, the cycle begins all over again. If you remain steady and consistent, a completely new dynamic starts forming between you both. You are not cruel for maintaining your standards. You are simply honoring the person you have become. That consistency forces him to choose what kind of man he truly wants to be. He will either rise and grow or slowly disappear from your life. Dignity never shrinks itself to keep someone comfortable. You do not need threats, emotional scenes, or endless explanations. You only need the courage to refuse lowering yourself beneath your own standards. This saves years of emotional exhaustion because it quickly reveals who is capable of meeting you where you are. The fourth stage happens when he finally understands there is no returning to the old relationship dynamic. Like and comment which part affected you most, and subscribe if you are serious about becoming emotionally stronger. The woman who once bent herself in every direction to keep him satisfied no longer exists, and she is not returning. He may feel grief, but often he is grieving the comfort and convenience he once had, rather than the depth of the connection itself. You no longer carry his emotional burdens for him. You no longer justify his lack of effort or poor behavior. If he decides to remain in your life, he will begin respecting you in a way he never truly did before. He starts taking responsibility for his actions because he knows he cannot keep you while remaining emotionally immature.